I have with us today Curtis Sprouse, is president and CEO of Eureka Connect and co-founder of the Institute for Biomedical Entrepreneurship. With over 38 years in healthcare and life sciences, Curtis has founded and led several companies. A former healthcare auditor turned entrepreneur, he specializes in developing people and building business models that drive real-world healthcare innovation. Through his work, Curtis equips leaders, researchers, and clinicians with the tools to turn ideas into impact, making him a sought-after voice at the intersection of science, entrepreneurship, and leadership development. And personally, one thing that stood out to me, Curtis, when I was doing my preliminary research was I have not met anybody on LinkedIn who's had over 300 reviews. I was like, whoa, I do want to welcome you to the manager's mic. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Well, thanks for having me, Paul. I appreciate it. I think, it's interesting you say that about the 300. It's a relatively small percentage of our population, but I think it speaks to how motivated people are from their experience to put something out there. A lot of high-level people are talking about what we do and why it's different. So I appreciate you bringing that up because it's not something that not easily promoted that you have that kind of following on LinkedIn.
No, I haven't seen it yet. So I was very impressed with it. It's a data point for me, and I'm a big data guy. So that's why I was looking at that. I want to go into the why behind behavior. So in our communication leading up to this podcast, you used a phrase that immediately caught my attention. And the phrase was the behavioral mechanism of action. And that stayed with me. Break down for me, somebody who's maybe listening this for the first time, when we look at someone's behavior on the surface, like what are we missing when it comes down to that statement in simple terms?
Paul, are you married?
I am married, 10 years.
Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Steph and I are well over 30 now. If you come home from work and you see your wife and she's in the kitchen and she immediately turns to you and she's upset about something, you haven't been in the room long enough for her to really be upset with you. So there's probably something else. What's the reason she's upset? And so when we look at behavior, people do things all the time because of emotion, because of something that happened to them, pattern matching. They see something happening in front of them that looks like something that happened to them previously, good or bad. And all of those types of things affect how we act and react. And what we've learned from the work we do is that by understanding the behavioral profile of someone, both genetic, what we call hardwired behavioral traits, and learned behavior, we can have a better understanding of and predict, more often than not, how Paul's going to react. If we look at genetics, hardwired behavior, 4 of the 7 that we look at are energy, dominance, discipline, and competing. We call that part of motivational theory. If I'm high energy, which I am, my energy score is 99 out of 100. I talk fast, walk fast, drive fast. I'm loud. Right now, I'm trying not to be overly loud because my wife said I'm too loud. But I'm thinking about it. If I stopped thinking about it, I'd even be louder. It's just my natural way of talking. Dominance, my need to control. I have a high dominance score. I like to control things. 83. As dominance gets above the 80th percentile, it drives bigger ego. So, I've got ego. I don't have a massive ego. I'm not solely driven by ego, but I have a healthy ego. Discipline. I have a lower, moderately low dominance discipline score. I don't like to do things that are necessary if I don't like them. I can be disciplined, but I'm not driven by discipline, as opposed to my wife and my oldest son, who are very driven by discipline. And then competitiveness. I've always been a high competing score, what's called I'm in the aggressive competing score category, where I compete with a sense of urgency and need to achieve, a need to, not a like to, a need to. So for me, my actions and reactions could be more pronounced than someone that has lower energy, lower dominance, lower competing, lower discipline. It's not good or bad. It's just that I'm naturally wired to be more intense than somebody that has a 50 for energy and a 50 for discipline and a 50 for dominance and a 50 for competing. Knowing that allows me to be A, accountable, and B, make myself accountable to you. I've just told you. If you and I talk a year from now, you'll remember, oh, Kurt's a pretty intense personality.
Yeah.
Now you'd figure that out after knowing me for some time, but you now know it in less than 5 minutes. By helping people understand that and how the genetics overlay with learned behavior, things like social skills. Is somebody good at social skills? Do they build good relationships? Do they have goodwill? Do they care for others? Compromise? Are they open-minded? Are they willing to move in new directions? Are they balanced? Accommodation. Once they know what you want, do they balance that movement to a new way of thinking or new position? Those 4 traits combined with avoidance are all part of emotional intelligence. We call it
Hmm.
acuity, emotional acuity. Those are just some of the elements we look at. We look at things like stress and decision making, and there's a myriad of other things that we look at. But by understanding in detail those dynamics of individual, we can help that individual understand what their proclivities are, where they're naturally going to go. And as a result, then we can help them understand where that natural tendency isn't optimal. And then how do you attack it? What do you do about it? How do you improve it?
Where my mind goes, because I am guilty, because you use the frame of your wife is mad in the kitchen, and I've made that mistake of not being the sounding board first. So I'm very connected with you, and maybe offline, or we'll see how this podcast conversation goes. You'll have to give me some marriage tips because you're 30 years in, so I'm catching up to you. You seem well diagnosed, like you know yourself very well, and you help a lot of people. You've been doing this for 30 plus years, and myself as a sales trainer, I see people managers constantly try to fix this result, like miss quota without knowing the cause, or you hear sometimes other even podcasters, I don't know if you've seen it, where like if somebody doesn't survive in like 7 to 21 days, just get rid of them. Why is it so hard for, in your professional opinion, professionals, managers, why is it so hard for them to identify those key drivers behind their team's behavior in your professional opinion?
I think it stems, Paul, from a couple different things. Number one, people aren't looking for the real problem. We have a natural tendency to gravitate towards the thing that we see first, and we draw assumptions. So one of the things I always say, you can be a good or poor listener. Because you're a good listener doesn't mean you're good at comprehending what people are saying. So I can give you a good example of this. If I were to say to you, "Hey, Paul, that hat looks really good on you." So you smiled. Your interpretation, well, you tell me, what was your interpretation? What's your interpretation of me saying that?
Well, my interpretation when you asked me was one, thank goodness, because I think so, number one. But two, it gave
Mm.
me a feeling of approval. And that's just some, those are top of mind things and lets me
So
know this is working.
yeah, so you took it as a positive, but you don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I'm trying to manipulate you. Maybe I think the hat looks stupid. Maybe I hate
Yeah.
black hats. You don't know, right? You just don't know. Most people would just stop at, oh, he gave me a compliment, as opposed to
Hmm.
saying, well, what do you like about my hat? Well, what I like about it is, even though I live in New England and I live on a little farm, which, most people up here are all, sort of English riding and English this and English that. I take great pride in that I've got well over a half dozen cowboy boots and I've got cowboy hats. And, on the weekends when I'm out on the farm, I look more like a cowboy than I do some English farmer or gentleman. So I like that kind of look. It's a look I subscribe to. When it's snowing out, I've got a hat that I wear, a cowboy hat I wear because it keeps the snow out of the back of my neck.
Yeah.
So I can go out and I can be on the tractor and do my things. I appreciate a nice cowboy hat. If you were to ask me what I liked about it and I were to tell you that, now you say, okay, there's substance behind what he's telling me. I have a greater understanding of what he meant by saying it's a nice hat. But
Hmm.
let's just change one word. Hey, Paul, that hat kind of looks good on you.
I'm
What
not
do you take?
smiling now.
Right, right. So now what would be your follow-on question?
Well, now, since you said kind of, I actually am a little more curious to be like, well, what do you mean it kind of looks good? It's actually what popped like instantly in my head the second you said that. That's the top of mind thought I had. Kind of. Yeah.
Well, so I'm gonna run with this, but I don't actually
Yeah.
know the answer to this, but I'm gonna go with it anyways.
Yeah, please do.
I would say, hey, Paul, you know what? You're such a good-looking guy and you've got such a great head of hair. Why cover it up with a hat? It's not that I dislike your hat. As a matter of fact, I love cowboy hats. I got a bunch of my own, but so so I didn't mean it as a negative, but you could interpret it as a negative. And this is the problem with sales leaders when, the team misses the quota. You didn't work hard enough. Well, no, it's, if you take the last few years, COVID impacted businesses in a very dynamic way, depending on the
Yeah.
type of business. This administration and their views on international tariffs impacted businesses dramatically. That was not something that could be forecasted. It was not something that could be anticipated. It was not things where you could run scenarios necessarily to understand, nor would you waste the time on it. If you were my boss and I said to you, I'm running scenarios on a pandemic to see if we have the correct dynamic in our supply chain to make sure
Yeah.
we can meet customer demand, you would say, get out and sell, Kurt.
Yeah.
I need you to deliver results this quarter. I'm not worried about what could happen if there's a pandemic.
Yeah.
And so we don't typically look for the real why. Most of the time, if you think about it, if I can't close a deal, there are two elements to the deal: the people and the situation.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's
It's a
it.
good
There's
frame.
nothing else. There's product and there's pricing and there's all of those good things, but the situation is what it is. If I don't have the budget, I'm not going to buy.
Yeah.
If I don't have the need, I'm not going to buy. If there's a better competitor that's going to give me the same product or a similar product for less money, I'm not going to buy yours. Those are
Yeah.
and we can go on and on and on about the dynamics around the
Oh,
situation.
yeah. I totally
But
understand the frame.
if you don't like me, I'm not going to buy, or
Yeah.
I don't like you. If there's no relationship, if I don't trust you, if it's a complicated where there's a service element to it, that after I buy, I have to require what I'm buying from you requires support and service, and I don't trust you, the representative for the company, I'm not going to buy. And these are all elements that are often not detailed or overlooked. And we get at the heart of that. We get at the
Right.
heart of it. Does the person have the right mindset relative to defining the problems? Do they use the right interpersonal skills? Do they build relationships? Do they strengthen relationships? These are all dynamics of the sales process or
Yeah.
the commercial process that we attack from a behavioral perspective.
Do you tack it from a behavioral perspective? And I interpret a lot of that very wise content you just shared with me as anchoring the relationship can defy the odds, is what comes to my mind. Is that something that you would align with as a good interpretation? Or would you say, well, actually, there's more there? Because that's what goes through my head instantly, top of mind.
Paul, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. And here's why. If if I'm selling to you and you have to go get approval from your boss, if you and I have a really loose relationship, we don't know each other well.
Right.
And there's budget pressure on the organization. I need you to go get this budget approved. The quote I gave you is 30% over what was budgeted, but the product's really needed. Your boss is complaining to you about, we need to cut spending. And now you're going to walk into his office and say, I need to find another 20 grand for
Yeah.
this project that you want me to do. If you know me, you would be more inclined to say, hey, Kurt, this is going to really be tough. You would expose to me what the problem is, and you and I could work through scenarios. Well, maybe we could defer that cost into the new budget year. Maybe we
Right.
can push it out. Maybe we can do some performance things that once you get my device in place and you're getting greater efficiency, we can come back and then put another in. There's a myriad of things that you and I could work through that would
Yeah.
give you a story that you'd carry to your boss. But that's facilitated by the fact that you and I have a relationship, and that you're comfortable leaning into me a little bit and saying, look, let's you and I partner on how I'm going to go pitch this to my boss.
Yeah.
People forget that. They lose sight of that. They go through, I called on, in the pharmaceutical, I called on the doctor, and I did my 20 calls, or I did my 20 sales calls.
Right.
Does the doctor trust you? Most doctors, 80+% of what they prescribe throughout their entire careers, what they learned at med school. So if you're going to disrupt that throughout their career, you've got to bring some pretty good data, credibility, trust, because they're going to most often go with what they learned. Right. So
Yeah.
these are all things that people aren't putting enough thought into, is that what's the landscape of the problem? What's the relationship? And stronger relationships will always put you in a better position as it relates to navigating the situation.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good frame. One of the questions I had that I think we kind of start going into now is in our communication exchange, it was, and I think this is going to challenge listeners. I think we're already challenging someone listening to this podcast in a healthy way. But you wrote to me that great leaders do not manage people. And I like this a lot. And I wrote it down. And it's actually going to, I probably use this in my last year of podcast, 2026. But you wrote, great leaders do not manage people, they teach them how to think. Now, going back to what you said, a lot of that sounds great, like on a high level. But I think about the overly critical person for some reason. Not that I think you shouldn't always think about the critic. You got to think about your performers. But what does that actually look like? Like this person listening, okay, it's a Tuesday afternoon. Now what? When we say that statement,
Are you a football fan? Do you like football?
I am. Hopefully, it doesn't disregard our relationship. I do like the Ohio State Buckeyes. I live in Ohio. What can I say? You know?
Well, I'm a Steelers fan, so I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. So that
all right,
we probably have some rivalry stuff going on here.
Yeah.
If you're Cleveland or Cincinnati, if you're a
Yeah.
Cleveland fan, my empathies. I feel sorry for you. But let's just take and even for those of your audience that aren't football fans, I think they'll understand the concept. Football is sort of like, it's like chess. It's a cross between war and chess. It's men on a field, 11 against 11. And when the quarterback walks up to the line, the offensive coordinator is called a play. We're going to run a play and we need to get 5 yards. It's 3rd and 5. We have to get 5 yards or we're going to punt the ball, give the ball away. And so we got to get 5 yards. And so the offensive coordinator calls a play, but then you get up to the line of scrimmage and the defense has presented a different defense. They've changed the defense. And this weekend, they were interviewing Aaron Rodgers, who's the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers now, who played long-standing quarterback for Green Bay Packers. But he said that they hit this play where they hit a touchdown pass, and it was just a little toss out into the flat on the left side. And he was smiling when he was being interviewed because he said, I've been telling Austin all season about when you see this defense, here's what we're going to do. And here's how I want you to run the pattern. That's a guy that's 20 years of doing it. It's that being able to adapt. What is the situation giving me? A great leader knows that they have to teach technique. They have to manage elements of the team, expectations, strategy, messaging. Those are all key elements of the training. But really great leaders realize that they can't be with that sales rep all the time. Right. So the sales rep has to be able to think, define the problem accurately. Is it a people problem? Is it a process problem? Is it a timing problem? Is it a budget problem that's getting in the way of me closing a deal? What's the barrier to the sell? And if you're not teaching them to think, because every sale is different. It's always different. They're not uniform. It's not the same. An old mentor of mine used to say this. This is a great example. Do you have a car, Paul?
I do.
Okay.
I have well, go on. Yeah.
Go ahead. No, tell me what kind of car do you have?
Well, I have 2 cars. So my wife, I think I'll share with you a little vibe. I give my wife always the nicest car. I always take the old car kind of person. I drive a Subaru Forester where the driver's side window still doesn't come down. Even though we have the money where I could go buy a car, I don't know. There's something wrong with me. I try to keep more money than I spend. There's my over answer to your question, though, Curtis.
So what my mentor used to say to me is, there's always one reason that a person ends up buying a car. There's one compelling reason. It could be the color. It could be the style. It could be that, I just want a car with a big engine. I want a car that's very luxurious. I want a car that makes a statement. But he said, if you're selling cars, you have to find the one reason the majority of people will buy your car. When you're selling something to someone, there's a reason that they're going to make their final decision to say yes. You've heard the old adage that people buy because of fear, not because of it's a good idea. They'll buy because of fear. Why do people buy life insurance? Because they're looking forward to dying? No, they buy life insurance because they're afraid they're going to die and leave people that they love in a hardship. They're not
Yeah.
buying it because they think it's a great, I can't wait to die and this thing to pay out. I don't want to leave my wife and my 3 children without a home and a way to survive my death. And so I'm going to go buy life insurance, even though I don't
Yeah.
want to die. And I hope I never have to use it. So it's understanding the why. And that why can be obstructed by a relationship, by situations, by economics. And so if you're teaching people how to think, they think on this multidimensional plane and able to understand what Aaron Rodgers understood when he walked up to the line of scrimmage and saw that defense and changed the play.
What you've been doing 30 plus years, 300 reviews. I'm curious if you're comfortable sharing with me, Curtis, like what were some key moments that you said, I want to do this kind of work? Because looking at your website, it was impressive. You have a conference coming up in June, a symposium I saw. I mean, this is work that is very inspiring. Some people would say, on some level, maybe salt of the earth work. What keeps you going? What was a moment where you said, this is what I want to do? I want to help these many people. And that keeps you, that anchor that keeps you doing this for 30 plus years. I just think it's very inspiring, which is why I'm asking this question. I know this, I'm going off script, but I'm just genuinely curious.
In 2009, a friend of mine, he'll laugh because he said he doesn't remember the conversation. We went to Ernst& Winning. We were in Ernst& Winning together. He called me on a Friday afternoon. He said, you're about halfway through your career. If you kept doing what you're doing now, would you be proud of yourself? And that's back when I was doing reimbursement work and developing reimbursement strategy for biopharma
Mm,
device companies. And I thought about it and I said, no, I don't want to do that another 20 years. It's
yeah.
economically rewarding, but I'm not making people's lives better. I'm not improving anything. And during that time, I had been doing work on clinical trial process efficiency, and I'd been working with academic medical centers. And I saw that there was just a tremendous amount of science that was just sort of stuck in the universities. And that
Mm,
what I discerned from those experiences was that if we could help people be better leaders and collaborators, we could probably improve the flow of ideas out of the universities to the market. And so starting a behavioral science company was really about the idea of helping people be better versions of themselves. Look, Paul, I'm not smart enough. I'm never going to cure a disease. I'm just not that guy.
yeah.
I'm good at a lot of things. Curing disease, science, that's not what I'm going to do. But
Yeah.
many of these great innovators that have brilliant ideas that could really improve the quality of life or advance life, they don't know how to get out of their own way as it relates to building relationships, collaborating, understanding regulatory pathway and commercial paths and commercial strategy. And
Yeah.
so the behavioral program facilitates the conversation in a more relevant, more meaningful, more efficient manner. And so I do this because I believe that we can develop better science, better solutions, that we could help people find more meaning in their life and how they do that. And I know that sounds trite, but we're well paid to do it. It's not
Yeah.
like I'm doing it just because of altruistic. We get paid well to do it because we do a very good job in how we execute. I'm part of, I've founded a number of companies in 2025, and there are probably a few more that I'll found in 2026. And I'm not a key person in those organizations. I may sit on the board or be an advisor on an operational daily basis, but I would hope that I'm a key person from a standpoint of helping the strategy and efficiency with which those ideas go forward. And so if I can teach that, and pass that on through the work we're doing through the behavioral program and the IBE. That's why I decided to go down this path.
In all your science and everything you do, since we've talked about teaching and helping a lot of people, I'll give you a frame. Maybe we could work through this frame. Earlier, it said that the sales rep came and he said, I couldn't do this. I couldn't do XYZ. The market comes to you and he says, I can't close the deal for whatever reason because of this. How does a leader teacher respond to that versus maybe like your traditional manager?
It's a great question. Let's take it from a standpoint that you and I want to decide if how we're going to close this deal.
Okay.
We want to close the deal. That's our goal is to always close, right?
Right.
So I'm going to go back to something my dad said, who was a lifelong sales guy. I asked him when I was first moving from being an accountant into doing sales and biz dev work. I said, Dad, what's your number one piece of advice? And he said, well, son, when you go and you make your best pitch and you get thrown out of the office, The last thing you do before you leave that office is you turn and you look to the person, you say, "Hey, Paul, when hell freezes over, what's the best number to reach you at?"
Okay.
And
Wow.
the idea and the concept is this, is that if you're not always trying to be successful, even as dark as it looks, then you won't be successful. That's the moral of the story. And so
Okay.
if a sales rep comes to me and says, I can't close a deal, the first question I ask is, is it you can't close it today or you can't close it ever?
Oh, that's a good one. I like that.
Right? Is it today or ever? Meaning that this person's never going to buy from you. And then, so if you tell me it's ever, tell me why it's ever. They're never going to have the budget. Our product's never going to be good enough. You're never going to have a good enough relationship. What's the why that answer is never?
Hmm.
In the work we do, I don't think I've ever seen a never. Meaning, I always believe that even if I have a really bad relationship with someone and they don't understand the value of what I'm selling, I always believe I can strengthen that relationship and I can prove to them that there's value in what we do. I believe that's possible. Now, the question is, do we want to expend those resources to accomplish that?
Yeah.
And maybe the answer is still no. That, yeah, I think I could improve my relationship with Paul and I could convince him of the value of what we're selling him. But I've got 20 other leads where that wouldn't be necessary, where John likes me and John sees the value and now John just needs to get the budget approved.
Yeah.
So you work through a series of questions that define the severity of the no. Is it
Hmm.
a hard no, a soft no? And once you understand that, then you can decide, maybe I tell the sales rep, you know what, let's just move on from this one. This one's not going to happen. Yeah, we put a lot
Yeah.
of time into it. We put the proposals together. We did the demos. We did the pilots, and it's just not going to happen for us. So what else do we got on the list? I don't want the sales rep to believe you're not going to close every deal. You're
Right.
just not. But you have to be thoughtful with regard to why it hasn't closed yet. I have another good friend who's been in sales his whole life. He said, if there's a delay, there's a problem.
Hmm.
Meaning, if you can't close a deal based on the timeline that was outlined, there's a problem. And what is the problem? And
Yeah.
most people don't accurately define what that problem is.
Do you believe a sales rep or a professional has to be personally fulfilled to be professionally effective?
I think that you can be a great performer and be a miserable human being.
Okay.
I've seen that.
Oh,
I've seen it. Now, I don't believe it's sustainable. I don't think it's sustainable. I think you can be a miserable person, but it's going to have ramifications. Either you're going to alienate your spouse, you're going to alienate your kids. There's going to be a price to pay for that. Meaning you
right.
might still deliver your numbers every quarter. You might blow it away. You might be the sales guy, the best sales guy in the world. But
Right.
I would say even within my own family, I think my dad probably, it took a toll on his relationship with my mom because he was a good sales guy. He was a
Hmm.
very good sales guy. But my mom didn't always like the things he did to have to be a good sales guy. And she had a hard time understanding some of the stuff he did. I get it now because I know the choices you have to make and you're presented with, when you're in a sales situation. I wouldn't say my dad was a miserable guy. Um, I think he had times in his life where he wasn't happy,
Right.
right? And I think it stems from the fact that he made decisions that were maybe helpful to the company closing business, but wasn't really helpful for his relationship with his wife. My way of looking at it is you don't have to be a jerk. And more often than not, if you're not, your ability to be successful over a long period of time is enhanced significantly. If you're going to coach someone, Paul, I'd coach them to say, look, if you have extremes in your personality and they're negative with regard to how others interpret them, then correct those dynamics of your personality. I'm not
Right.
responsible for your behavior. If you're a jerk, that's not my responsibility. Now,
Yeah.
I can take responsibility and try to help you and point out things that you could do to not be such a difficult personality or challenging person. But at the end of the day, you're responsible for you. I've got a company that I'm a consultant for. They'd like me to join their board. And I love the founders,
Hmm.
but they don't have a great relationship. And one individual in particular can be a little prickly.
Hmm.
Nice person, but they're prickly. And I have to have a conversation with them because this person has to own that behavior. Because you're intelligent and you're a genius doesn't give you the right to be a jerk. And
Yeah.
so I think that we can help people understand that you don't have to compromise. You don't have to be a jerk to be successful. And by not being one, being a good person and a kind person and a person that's thoughtful is far more effective for longer periods of time than being the inverse of that.
Hmm. It makes me reflect on a story that always has resonated with me over the years when you share with me about your dad, your mom, and connecting those dots very clear with me, Curtis. Maybe you've heard this story about the man goes to the doctor and he's got chest pains and they do all the tests and they find out nothing's wrong with him. And he realizes it's stress and the doctor is telling him about this and he goes, look, I'm a number one sales performer, and I'm going to butcher the story a little, but you'll get the point. And the doctor says, well, I want you to visit a grave once a week, because he tells him that because the guy says, nobody can do what I do. I'm the best at this. I'm the greatest salesperson, whatever. And he says, and I want you to walk around the graveyard and just look at everybody, because a lot of those people have been my patients. And they said the same thing sitting on that table. He goes and he comes there and he starts to hug his kids more, love his wife more, because he realizes what he said was so asinine and so silly. Because you mentioned some stuff about your dad, is there any, like, because you said it put some strain on a relationship, is there any one moment that has stayed with you that would you say, has molded you into the great professional you are today from that experiences you had growing up?
Think I don't think I can point to one moment. I think I have to point to a lifetime of observations. Because you look through that relationship, my mom and dad, we had a very happy household. I was blessed. My brother and I grew up in a laughing, fun, supportive family on so
Yeah.
many fronts. And my parents stayed together until my father passed a few years ago. But
Yeah.
I think the way to frame it is this. I have a friend of mine who's a client, and she said to me the other day, she said, Kurt, you and I are 10 percenters. And I said, well, what's a 10 percenter? And she said, people who've been married for over 30 years who actually love their spouse, not just tolerate them. She said,
Hmm.
we all know that there's, over 50% of the people get divorced. But she said, then you get all those people that don't get divorced. And she said, many of them just tolerate each other.
Hmm.
And I would agree with my friend that Stephanie and I have built a stronger relationship over the 30 plus years, that we we've been through tough times together, and we didn't make them elements that affected our marriage. We navigated tough things throughout our lives, both with businesses and our kids and all of that. And we never let it become a strain on the relationship we had. And it probably brought us together. And we found ways to make it bring us together. So I think the observations are, as I got older and watched that relationship with my parents, I saw that it wasn't the ideal relationship I thought it was when I was young. When I was very young, I thought it was a very good relationship. It was perfect. They loved each other. They
Yeah.
were at every game I ever had. They supported me in school. Good cop, bad cop. I understood that as I got older. But I think as I got into my 30s and 40s and started having kids, I could see that there was a much greater strain there than I had realized. There was resentment for things that had been done when I was younger that I didn't even know about and understand at the time. My wife, Stephanie, had a very tough childhood too, because her father died at the age of 4. Her mom
Yeah.
remarried. That wasn't a great situation. Then her mom remarried a third time. And all 3 of those husbands passed. So Steph watched her father and 2 stepfathers all pass, and married of kids that came in through those different marriages. So she was in a very disruptive, disgruntled family environment for her, the entirety of her youth, growing up through high school and college. And I think together we've sort of, without saying it, have decided to sort of take a slightly different path with each other to do something different for our children and in our lives. Our careers are, I think I don't think you can separate the two. I don't think you should separate the two. I think you should
Yeah.
sort of look at them as being one and the same, is that your career is a mechanism to support yourself and your family and those things that you want for the people around you. And that you don't want to sacrifice those people because of the career because of the people. It's going to be a balance. And it's never a perfect balance. It's
Yeah.
never, there's no perfection. There's times that one thing's working better and the other thing isn't. It ebbs and flows.
I want to be married 30 years. You've had success professionally and personally. And I have 2 kids. How many kids you said you had, if you don't mind
We
me?
have 3. We have 3.
3? Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
2 boys, Luke's 30, Max is 28, Maya's 27.
Oh, that's awesome. Congrats. And I do want to say about your father passing, just my condolences there. I'm just curious to try to help me become a better professional or man or another person listening to this. What are some advice who wants to be married 30 years? Is there any like here are the three things you always should do? Or is it just the happy wife, happy life only statement that you prescribe to? I'm just curious if there's something there that maybe that can help me to be better so I can have those same results.
I think a couple things are you have to try to understand how your spouse looks at you. I think you have to start with, what is it that you're projecting and what is it that your spouse sees in you, good and bad. I think that you also have to look at where's the stress in your spouse's life and are you adding to that stress or not? I think there were
Hmm.
times early on in our marriage where I didn't realize the stress that Steph had, having 3 kids in diapers and I was traveling all the time. I was so busy working and so consumed with getting on a plane and getting to the next meeting and preparing for that meeting that I didn't really fully understand until later the burden I'd placed on her in having 3 kids under the age of 4, all at home with diapers. And she was unbelievable in how she navigated that. I think that and that changes, right? Now we're getting into that point where she's sort of thinking about she'd like to retire. And, I really don't want to retire. And how are we going to navigate that? And so I think it's an understanding of where the two of you are in relation to your life. I'm
Right.
in my 60s now. I'm past halftime. I don't have another 60 years. So with the time I have left, what am I going to do with it? And the quality of that, in large part, is going to be dictated by the relationship that Steph and I have. Number one, understanding where you're at. Number two is always trying to improve the personal relationship and the situational relationship. I used to always think about myself, finish my day of work, and I go downstairs and say, Steph, what are we having for dinner? Because I was worried about what I was going to eat.
Yeah.
And I've changed that slightly to say, hey, Steph, what do you want to do for dinner?
Hmm.
Because maybe she doesn't want to cook. Maybe she wants to go out.
Agree with
It's
that.
slightly different way of framing everything you do. Do you put the emphasis on yourself relative to the question you're about to ask or the action you're about to take, or do you put the emphasis on your spouse? And what you find is when you put it on your spouse, they reciprocate.
Hmm.
They do because they give back the same thing that they're getting. And so I think it's a subtle thing. It doesn't have to be a monumental thing. It can be little things. On a Saturday morning, going down and making a pot of coffee and bringing a cup up to her in bed so she doesn't have to get out of bed. These don't have to be earth-shaking things, but I think that many people lose that sense of of just showing kindness. You get so familiar with each other, you stop showing the kindness.
Right.
I had a accountant, Phil Senior McCauley. He once told me years ago, this over 20 years ago. I walked into his office one day. He was a sort of a chubby little short guy, and he had a mountain bike in his office. And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Well, my wife and I we raised our kids, and then we sort of grew apart. And then, 20 some years later, we looked at each other and we really didn't know each other. And we decided we were going to start doing activities that we could do together that we both enjoyed." And I said, "Well, you don't really look like a mountain biker." And he said, "Well, I'm not, but she loves it." And he goes, "And I love being with her. So
Oh,
I do it."
that's nice.
Yeah. And hers is a paddleboard. She wanted a paddleboard one year and I bought her a paddleboard. And then she's like, "Well, you bought one. So we're not going to do this together." So the next day I went out and bought a second paddleboard and I'm like, "Okay, well, let's do this together." And I love it. I enjoy it now. I really do like doing it, but it wasn't something that I would have thought of to do on my own without her encouragement. My wife Steph said I'm really good at finding 100 words when one would have done. So that's a lot of different thinking to what your question was, but I don't think relationships are easy. I just, this morning I just got 2 names of divorce attorneys for one of my best friends who's going through a
Ugh.
divorce. It's and I was just thinking how sad it is that I'm sending this email off to one of my good friends. It's just, gosh, how sad is that, right?
Yeah.
So I think relationships are complicated. I think you have to constantly be working, being aware. I would never say my relationship with Steph was work. I don't think it was work. I
Yeah.
enjoyed every moment of it. That doesn't mean they were always easy, but they weren't. I never looked
Of
at it and thought
course.
it
Yeah.
was drudgery. But I have friends that think of it that way. Like,
Hmm.
oh my God, you know what my wife did or what my husband did.
I think you saved someone's marriage out there. I think just that question of what do you want to do for dinner was a good one of the things I'll kind of go toward as we come toward the end of this podcast. I asked you in our email exchange, what are your call to actions? You said to me that your call to action is a commitment to a lifelong journey of learning approach to build stronger relationships, improve situations they are a part of, and carry a more profound sense of purpose and responsibility. And not a lot of people give me call to actions like that, Curtis, if I'm being completely. It's more like newsletter. It's more like, here's my toy. And everybody's got to make $1. I get that. And I'm curious, thinking about your call to action, what is maybe like a resource or habit that is recommended for a manager who wants to start the journey today to being better? What's that one habit, that one resource that you can prescribe?
We all have these cell phones and, the internet, this doom scrolling. We've all seen that, but it's also an unbelievable resource. I can ask my phone any question and get a pretty good answer, or find the resources to give me the answer, or give me the confidence that the information that I'm seeking is accurate. There are ways to get at that, right? Not always by just asking the question, by interrogating the question, maybe. So we have these
Yeah.
great resources that we didn't have when I was a kid. You're a lot younger than me, but when I was a kid, if you wanted to learn something, you had to go to a library, find a book, read it, or find something that knew something about it to teach you. Every human being at a very young age, once they're able to read, can grab one of these little devices, whether it's a computer. The access to knowledge is like nothing that's ever existed in history. And yet we're
Yeah.
not teaching kids to focus on that. They're focusing on stupid stuff. And and I know I'm going to sound old, but
That's
um, taking pictures of themselves and touching them up. I mean,
fine.
you look at me. My face. My wife said I have the perfect face for radio. Right?
Oh,
It's like I, I'm, bald. I'm wrinkly. It's just okay. That's what I am. Those were the cards I was given, and spending a lot of time trying to artificially change that,
right.
that's not who I am. So that's my own personal position on that, is that people spend far too much time worrying about what they look like. No, I'm all for exercising, and I think you should keep your hair cut and look good, and
Yeah.
wear a nice cowboy hat and have a shirt that matches. I'm a big proponent of that kind of stuff, but I think that we spend a lot of cycles of energy on things that aren't productive and aren't building us. You should read every day. If you can't physically
Yep.
pick up a book and you're in the car, or you're going for a walk, or you're working out, read a book.
Right.
Every day you could do that.
Agree.
Every single day. And you're going to learn something. But by accident, you will learn something. When you meet somebody, treat them with kindness. I don't care if it's a gas station attendant, if it's somebody that just flipped you off in the car, don't flip them back. Smile, say you're sorry. You don't know what that person just, lost a parent, has a sick kid, the wife just divorced them, husband just cheated on them. You have no idea why that person flipped you off. Don't don't
Yeah.
don't feed into it. Situationally, you and I have talked enough about this. Understand the real problem in front of you.
Right.
Understand it. Really understand it. Think. Be thoughtful about it, and try to fix it. Try to make it better. Try to improve it. I, you got to show up every day, anyways. You got to get up every day. Why not try to do it a little bit better? I think we just don't think about that a lot. We just go through life instead of thinking about how to execute a life.
Would you speak to your podcast and where people can find it, the name of it, and where people can get more information so they can follow you, consume a lot more of your wisdom so they can level up and be better professionals? Would you speak to that a little, please?
If people want to explore us helping them, supporting them, Eureka Connect, we can put you through the behavioral profile. We can get some support on understanding where you're at, and resources that you can use on your own personal path and journey. That's what we do. So eurekaconnect.com. You can also reach out to my assistant, Shauna Reed, sreed at eurekaconnect.com. Shauna can get you an appointment with me, and we can set up a meeting and get you help. The Eureka moment, you can find it on our website, the links to the podcasts. If you go to YouTube, it's under the Eureka Connect, and you can find Eureka Connect moment, the podcast there, the videos of them.
Yeah.
And then if you're interested in the translational work, IBE, the Institute for Biomedical Entrepreneurship, it's ibeinc.org. eurekaconnect.org. And that is a 5-day course on translation. It's a graduate level program. I'm very proud to say of 500 graduates of the program, we've started over 250 companies that have
Oh, wow.
started or advanced
Really?
through the IBE. Many of them are things that would have never gotten out of the lab. And we're getting better and better at that. We're partnering with universities in the Netherlands. We've got great relationships with Leiden University and LEH. I'll put a shout out to them. But we're also trying to develop relationships with the universities in Pennsylvania. And we've done some work in Ohio and New Jersey. Right now, we're working in Utah. And then we've done a lot of work in Canada. I'm actually on the board of and have founded 3 different companies out of Canada.
Wow.
University of Alberta, University of Ottawa. There's some great science and technologies. But Eureka Connect website and the IBE website or Shauna on both fronts can help get you connected to me.